Thanks everyone for your patience with some technical issues. My name is Elfving-Hwang. I'm work here at Curtin University at Career Research and Engagement Center. For those of you who are just joining for this one session, and thank you to all of you who have stayed here all this time. We still have one more session to go. So we have 4 presentations today, and you can see the names and presentation titles there in front of you on the slide. So I won't waste any time reading them out. But just to say, we're very pleased to have our colleague from all around the world joining us tonight. We have Rebecca Chiyoko King O'Ryan, Maynooth from Maynooth University, Hyunsun Yoon from City University of London, hopefully not too early for you. Rainier Bilones from University of the Philippines, Diliman, and Anna Lourdes Cruz from University of Philippines, Diliman, as the presenting author for Ken Russell, Peñaflor, University of the Philippines, Diliman. So, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you. We'll have 10 minutes each. I'll be sending you messages as we go on just to keep you up to date of how much time you have left. And then we'll have some question time at the end. And for all of you online, if you have any questions, please post your questions on the question and answer box, and then we'll get back to your questions a little bit later. So first of all, if I could ask Rebecca to start with your presentation.
Good morning, everyone, from a very rainy Ireland, very early in the morning. Happy to be here to make what feels like a kind of nano presentation, building on Jeremiah's work. My presentation is entitled Korean Culture. I just really get it now. Paraculturality and K-pop TikTok. Okay. The slide won't progress, so I don't. Oh, here we go. Yeah, there we go. So obviously, I don't need to tell this audience about TikTok or the Korean wave. But I kind of got into TikTok in terms of research when Korea, as Jin Lee says, was moving from cringe to cool. TikTok in Korea was moving from cringe to cool. But I was focused, there were plenty of very good scholars working on TikTok in Korea who, and so I became interested in it sort of in the contraflow and the content that was coming out of Korea, in part because TikTok itself says that it's been one of the major driving factors within the Korean wave. And it's one of the major platforms that has allowed this to happen, so where K-pop has surpassed other hashtags on TikTok like rock or pop or even hip hop. So my research really focuses on the perception of Korean culture by Western K-pop boy band fans in the US and Europe, based on ethnography I did before I was cut off by the pandemic, interview and survey data, as well as virtual methods on media channels, other media channels too, including TikTok. So who are the K-pop fans that I was talking to? This is just a snapshot of our data in Chicago. But as you can see, a lot of the fans are young, a lot of the fans are female. But one of the things that really surprised us in the US in particular was how racially and ethnically diverse the sample was. Again, this is in Chicago. So large African-American Latino population, Latinx population. So 55% of them describing themselves as basically people of color, but not that many, only 15% identified as Asian or Asian Pacific Islander. And the thing that's interesting about this is, so it's very diverse racially and ethnically, but actually the narrative of what they were telling me about K-pop and particularly about Korean culture was very homogenous, because in part they were getting it all from similar sources, primarily obviously digital social media. So part of this is about the fact that these fans don't have access in person for the most part, and that sets off sometimes kind of beef between Korean fans in Korea of K-pop and fans outside of Korea. but they do it mainly through digital media. So TikTok is key, obviously, to accessing this. And one of the things that I noticed is that they tended to talk in very strong emotional language about connection, about sociality, in terms of socializing with other fans through TikTok, and also collective action. I see we're going to have a paper on collective action on social movements. So that was a big part of what people talked to me about. So, but in this paper, I'm going to just focus on kind of emotional relationships. And I'm building on the concept of parasocial relationships. And many of them talk to me about live streaming. Obviously, Felix of Stray Kids here, live streaming, and how this felt like an interpersonal, intimate relationship. And so there's lots of research on parasocial relationships. And of course, this is mainly mediated through digital media like TikTok. I had written before about V Live in terms of how K-pop fans use live streaming to create this feeling of very kind of one-to-one, almost kind of personal intimacy, building on another concept that I've written about before called emotional streaming, which was really family members were emotionally streaming, but they take this and they put this onto a platform like TikTok. And even though it's parasocial, excuse me, and they know that it's one to many, in this case, it's 138,000 people, 1 to 138,000 people, it's mimicking emotional streaming in a parasocial space. But I became interested after studying parasocial relationships in what I'm calling paracultural relationships, because I felt like it wasn't just emotions that were kind of at play here, but also understandings of culture. And many of my interviewees talk to me about this. So what do I mean by paracultural? What I mean really is that it's this one kind of homogenous notion of a Korean culture. Actually, Jaya mentioned this, it becomes kind of homogenously symbolic, but it's mediated through TikTok and becomes ethnicized as Korean in my view. So here's a quote from Jenna, who's 21 from Northern Ireland and a huge K-pop fan. And she says to me that she didn't know anything about Korean culture before becoming a K-pop fan, but now she just really gets it now. And so then I asked her, what do you get? And she says, the people are friendly, the culture is amazing. It completely changed my perspective. It's their etiquette, the way they speak to older people. They're very polite, they bow, and I think they're much more conservative, I guess would be the word, compared to the likes of Europe. So for her, this is what she's telling me, Korean culturally, that she's learned. Now, yeah, well, I'll come back to that in a second, but this is all happening, though, of course, as Tidjane McHenry and Abidin tell us in what is a kind of a silo sociality, right? I would also argue that this is sort of a vacuum, where Korean culture is not considered odorless in the Iwabuchi sense of odorlessness, but it has this flavor that attracts fans to it. As Jan, who is a male K-pop fan from the UK, told me, I just love it. It's something totally different, right? So the question really is, what are they learning, and then what do they do with the knowledge of what they're learning, right? So I asked again, Sarah. We were waiting in line at the Monsta X concert for many hours, and I asked her, what did you learn? And she says that they're definitely more perfectionists in the Asian culture. The bold is mine. It's more of a thing in the culture that everything has to be perfect and you have to be smart and you have to be pretty, and that's part of the culture. They're just perfectionists. Now, I've bolded the two words, the Asian, because for me, this is signaling a homogenization, not just of Korean, but all Asians are, I think, in her view, perfectionists. And that's kind of an interesting slippage for me, that Korean represents all Asian, which obviously clearly it doesn't. Other people responded, again, because I only have however many 3 minutes left, that they want to eat Korean food. A lot of these have been mentioned before. They want to learn to speak Korean. They want to go to Korea and meet a Korean man. But in reality, for my participants, they have no contact with Korean people. They do not speak Korean. And there is very little chance, actually, because of their class backgrounds, that they will actually have the means to travel to Korea. So one of the questions really is around the authenticity of what the culture that they're labeling Korean or they think is Korean, is it actually Korean? And does that even really matter? Because certainly some of the things that are mentioning wouldn't necessarily jive with my experiences, for example, in Korea, but that doesn't really matter perhaps for them, because I'm not sure they're ever really gonna go there and try to interact actually with people in Korea. So K-pop then is a dream for many of these people, as a dream of global mobility, really, of learning Korean, of traveling, of meeting someone different. And I think this imaginary or this dream is fueled. This is just one example. This is Interpark's new app, Triple. And they're trying to get people to go on the app and enter the contest. And the lead tagline is, do you dream of attending your favorite K-pop star's concert? Do you want to go to Korea? And so I think there's a whole capitalist infrastructure in the industry that supports this. Obviously many words of caution, but 2 words of caution. One is, I think this type of mediated social cultural interaction has the potential to further fetishize and objectify Korean people, in particular idols. And in fact, one of an Asian K-pop style TikToker content creator that I actually interviewed said, there's more to me than being Korean. And he's sort of starting to get sick of what he calls Korea booze. You also see this in the tension between the fandoms. I mentioned that in terms of access to tickets, fan wars around behavioral expectations of the idols themselves, etc. And I think cultural expectations may be very different if Western fans travel to Korea. This is where I think Min-Ju Lee's research on Western women who went to Korea to find the Korean boyfriend and were disappointed, based on images and expectations gleaned from K-pop and K-drama, are really, really important to see where those two things come together. One thing that we might look at as a kind of counter to that, so that to make sure these things don't happen, is to encourage, I think, what is really interesting, more in-person social opportunities. So what Cedar Boseji calls these K-pop adjacent industries. One of the ones that we have in Europe, of course, is K-Events, and they sponsor these K-pop disco nights all over Europe once a month. And it is a really interesting place to do ethnography, because it's a pan-Asian social gathering, a very mixed crowd, and we're united by interests in K-pop, but there are actually real face-to-face interactions rather than just mediated notions of Korean culture. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for keeping time. We have potentially a little bit more time left, as one of our speakers hasn't joined us yet, but fingers crossed they will join us shortly. Thanks very much, Rebecca. We'll move on to our next presenter. Hyunsun, if you can come over here.
You see this, right? I really started this work. This is very early, in an early stage of this work. I'm trying to put together a more evidence and data for IMCR in Singapore, July 25. So let me just start with my question. What's wrong about funny videos and TikTok perpetuating ageist stereotypes, or is it? My research interest, I teach advertising and marketing communications, but my particular research interest has always been around age and aging. So often aging consumers or advertising in aging society, etc. And often you see this role of ageism or stereotypes heavily influencing the tone and manner that marketers or even educators or journalists are using. So stereotypes, as you know, are very crude set of mental representations. And I am using good old Stuart Hall's notion of the other or othering. And we can see different, and these 2 images are copyright-free images, quite generic. Bang Mang-rae is a YouTuber, an influencer, and possibly one of the top 3 in terms of its followers, influencers of her age in the whole of Asia. So hashtag Korean grandma. She has done different, very entertaining, often, informative, videos, and most of her work is also available on TikTok. So the otherness has always been the case and long-standing theme, and I have done some work using the cases of contemporary TV advertising in the context of South Korea. And as expected, I have found this construction of the otherness and exercise of symbolic power through representational practices of stereotyping. So in summary, I found using the TV commercials as examples, I found 4 main themes, including marginalization, and they were always been caricatured, and they were in presence with extended family, not on their own. Their role as an independent woman were not really there. But then that's, almost a decade ago. So, studying media or social media and how a certain audience group or citizens are represented in those texts are very important, because they shape how we think. And also the long-standing age stereotypes that almost always linked with dependency and decay, and that is a problem. So I really wanted to see how TikTok is probably serving as another social media platform that perpetuates ageist stereotypes. I mean, with ageism, both young and the old can be subject to and a target of such discriminations and prejudices. And here my scope of this study is focusing on middle-aged onwards, more young, old age groups. So I wanted to see how audiences are responding to such videos, and whether or not there are differences in terms of their reception. So this by nature is audience research. If TikTok is effective as a platform, especially in the context of marketing, if these stereotypes are being shown in a very short video form, if they are effective, I mean, wouldn't it be very significant in terms of such negative influencing, negative stereotypical categorizations of this age group? So I mean, I also wanted to stay open-minded as a researcher, as a middle-aged and aging woman, whether or not it could offer fresh perspectives, and it could work as a site where people are encouraged to have more intergenerational interactions. And indeed, often the producers and the makers were the young and those who perform, or on the other side of the lens were their grandparents or their generation. So framing old age in terms of its loss, in terms of its decay and decline, is nothing new. And there are also some growing trends, as I will see later in the slides, of growing diversity and inclusion within the group and in between groups. So I am not saying that nothing has changed, and indeed things have changed. But there are shocking instances where we see some language, such as calling the elderly. This was a journalist called Jeremy Warner in Telegraph, a reputable newspaper in the UK. And early in the COVID stage, he was talking about he, she, they. I really don't know. Talking about how COVID could potentially be a good thing in economic terms, and it was really shocking. And yet, some people did understand where this language has come from. So during COVID pandemic, intensification of ageism, intergenerational tensions on social media were extremely visible, and we've seen examples in the US as well. And hashtag #OkBoomer has been talked about a lot in recent years. So because our, not just services in terms of, transactions, marketing, advertising, but human interactions are often computer mediated, and our interactions are, completely digitized in many cases. So the meaning of digital inclusion and exclusion has to change as well. It will evolve. So the digital divide, digital literacy will become less about whether you're online, offline, whether you know how to use internet, how competent you are, to navigate the content. It will be more about what kind of activity you're doing and how you're doing, with what kind of intentions, and what role those activities play in your everyday life. So one example was from this study, 2022. I think both scholars are from Singapore. The way to start this analysis was to create a TikTok account, and they collected 332 videos with those two hashtags, OK Boomer and Boomer. And again, nothing shocking, but most videos had negative encounters with baby boomers, and often swearing or really awkward, weird, random behavior in public. More than half was about conflicting values and beliefs between different generations. So, I mean, while the media, this is from Western media, the New York Times are talking about how, increasing level of diversity and inclusivity are witnessed in Korean TikTok or influencers environment. This unit is not me, it's another person. I do think this could probably be the minority. I haven't, I'm not a quantitative scholar myself, but, even using simple math, there are a lot more TikTok videos still featuring in the same old way. And I am going back, many decades to film studies scholar and media scholar here, Laura Welby and Marshall McLuhan. Maybe some of you are way too young even to remember or, come across such theorists and scholars. But my main concern and fundamental problem with these videos were the gaze. It was, completely through the gaze of the young. And I am sure there will be examples that will contradict what I've just said. And that's what I'm looking for. So young people, I mean, medium is the message, is Marshall McLuhan's phrase in a book that he that was published 60 years ago now. But young people are controlling, in this case, both the medium and the message. And I mean, we often say TikTok is a Gen Z's playground. And as you have seen in the New York Times article, maybe it's not anymore. But there is an area to be looked at in terms of power dynamics. I mean, is that a level playing field? So the theory that I want to look at, I mean, I'm only starting in this field, is theories in humor. And when does humor become mockery? I mean, how do you actually draw a line in between those two? Was that an intention by the old people, old grandma shouting or swearing? Was it her intention to, to make people laugh? Or, I mean, all of those questions came to me. But at the same time, I mean, could it be a site where, I mean, some intergenerational tensions in a society like South Korea, I mean, could it be resolved through, the simple fact that more and more intergenerational contexts and interactions are encouraged, and appropriate use of humor? Yeah. Also, this is probably less relevant to ageism, but I also noted a lot of narratives and representations about anti-aging and active aging that could also be quite problematic and excluding some people. Angus and Reeve actually termed this and described this as new ageism. based on ableism, etc., etc. So my next step, I don't know how I'm doing with time, and my next step is to read more on humor, theories on humor, especially incongruity and spirituality or disposition theory, and in relation to social and interpersonal dynamics. This will be in the context of audience research and using qualitative, research methods, but also as the target group is, from certain, market segment, I will also be using cultural and social gerontology. The issues that I had methodologically and in terms of research ethics is the authenticity of people's responses posted online, and whether or not I should employ a mixed method, such as talking to the producers, actually having more monitored and controlled research setting. I mean, it's a question to be asked. Okay, thank you very much, and I'll probably deal with Q&A later on.
Thanks very much for your presentation. And we're going to now move to what is actually our last presenter today. We unfortunately are still missing one of our presenters, so there must have been some kind of technical issue. So Anna, if I could ask you to say something.
Good afternoon, I'm Anna Cruz, and my partner in this study is Peñaflor. And our study is Hear Me Out, analyzing TikTok as a platform for unveiling the tabooness of Korean mental health. But before we proceed, I want to give a quick heads up because some parts of this presentation will touch on some sensitive topics related to mental health. So please feel free to take a break if you find any of the material distressing or triggering. All right. So moving forward, this study aims to examine how TikTok is used to achieve goals related to promoting discussions on mental health, explore how social media platforms like TikTok fill the gap in mental health discussions, and gauge the current trends in TikTok regarding mental health and its future applications. So the methods used in this study, the study employs media theoretical framework to analyze randomly selected TikTok reels under mental health in South Korea, search category. And utilizing these frameworks, the critical theory is applied to investigate how the media content either perpetuates or challenges existing power structures or ideologies related to mental health, while the cultural studies theory is employed to examine how the content reflects on influences cultural norms and values within the South Korean context. And the reels from various channels relevant to South Korea, regardless of whether the content was presented in Korean or English. And the collection also included channels managed by non-Koreans but focused on mental health discussions within South Korea. The study focuses on the analysis of mental health content in South Korea TikTok videos, particularly those that feature discussions on depression, anxiety, and general mental well-being. But this study is limited to the results of the keywords used, also the platform's algorithm, and the subjective nature of the video contents. All right, so South Korea is deemed as one of the wealthiest and most developed countries in the world, with its advanced technology, strong economy, and high standard living, of course, and quality health service. The country continues to be a global leader in various sectors. However, despite its advancements, it seems to give low priority to one of the important aspects of life, which is mental health. Apparently, this is due to the confusion nature of the Korean culture, in which mental health remains a taboo subject, forcing the society to rely on self-reliance and their own strength to cope. So it is a belief ingrained in the society which hinders the effectiveness of mental health awareness and all other advocacy efforts by South Korean medical practitioners. So there, due to the increasing suicide rates and number of registered South Korean having mental disabilities and disorders, there is a national mental health crisis in Korea. So just some sneak preview of the timeline in terms of South Korean government initiatives in addressing such problems. So in 1995, Korea enacted the first Mental Health Act. This is when people with mental illness were isolated in a facility to one which seeks to integrate into the community. And then years after, the government has been releasing or implementing 5-year national mental health promotion plan. So as the leadership changes, the plan is also being modified depending on the visions of the current leader. And then in 2016 and 2017, the Mental Health Act was revised, and it is now called as the Mental Health and Welfare Act. This is a big leap to the mental health systems in Korea, because compared to the 1995 or the old practice of isolating the people with mental illness, people with potential or diagnosed mental health concerns are now being referred to respective community facilities or institutions that can give the proper interventions. So this is how the community-based system looks like, together with the new act. And then 2023 and 2025, the implementation of the 5-year plan for suicide prevention is expected. And next year is the expansion of the state budget for all mental health related efforts from the government. But what else to be done in addressing such concerns? So the proponents would like to point out the 3 key measures that can be of help in terms of keeping up with the trends and the needs of the people concerned. So improve community-based system. In the past decade, it has been effective. However, there has been issues in terms of consent. Some families send their loved ones without proper consent, and that individual ends up not receiving the right intervention that he needs. And then expansion of public investment in care promotion. This could be in early intervention, treatment, and rehabilitation, and of course harmonizing the balance between inpatient and outpatient care. Which is very important to look onto, given the stigma and the stereotypes people have in terms of mental health. So there enters the role of social media in terms of educating the public, or in attempt of raising awareness in terms of mental health issues. So as of 2023, 5.6 million of South Korean are TikTok users, and mainly their purpose is to maintain or build connections, keeping up to date with the current issues and trends. And lastly is educating themselves. So like with the information available in TikToks, they discover and learn from it. So the key findings, why TikTok? Because it caters the brief attention span, in which users can swiftly and effortlessly create and share videos that are both engaging and educational. So here are some of the TikTok channels that the researchers reviewed and visited. So some TikTok channels focus on content creators who share their personal stories, conduct interviews, and feature narratives or interviews with individuals experiencing mental health concerns. And some are professionals in the field of mental health. So these are the apparent themes collated from the selected TikTok videos. So first, the differentiation between mental health and mental illness is still on the table. Videos by Nunas Nunchi and K-Explorer highlighted the Korean societal misconception about mental health, especially the difficulty in distinguishing it from mental illness. So the confusion reflects a broader struggle, which can be addressed through targeted education and awareness campaigns to promote clear understanding. So for the interest of time, I won't be playing the videos. Next apparent theme is Korean culture being an achievement-oriented culture. So TikTok creator Jinwoo Park said that this mindset is strongly rooted from the Korean saying "뭘 잘했다고로," which means what good things have you achieved in order to deserve to cry. So if you are doing an excellent job, that's when you have the privilege to think about other things or other problems, just like acknowledging your feelings or your emotions. Another TikTok content creator also mentioned that it seems that mental illness is only for the privileged, or there are also notions that having a mental illness is a white thing. So this this notion is also relevant to the concept of self-sufficiency. So strong manifestation of the confusion nature of the society, where people are obliged to restrain their emotions, avoid interpersonal conflicts, and suppress individual rights, so as to remain in good harmony with others. And then other content are also presented in a day in a life trend. So it is a notable trend in South Korean TikTok culture in which creators share clips from Korean dramas and entertainment shows that address mental health concerns, and also sharing a bit of their lives and how do they deal with depression, sadness, anxiety that they face. So yeah, other trends include education. So there's a non-government organization based in Korea named Mental Health in Korea, which showcases real life stories of people with mental illness. They interview and produce educational videos debunking myths and misconceptions about mental health. So this one, like the question here is, are people self-harming themselves attention seekers? And then this one, which I personally like, is content creator, which mainly covers language learning, or like help audience learn the Korean language. But what stands out among his videos is the conversation practice with someone with depression or feeling depressed. So the creator helps the audience to be familiar with phrases and the manner of delivery when expressing heavy repressed emotions.
Hi, Anna. So sorry, you're nearly out of time. So if you can conclude the presentation.
All right. Sure. So the study examined how TikTok helped in promoting conversation about mental health, especially in South Korean setting. It is also look at how social media platform may bridge gaps into the conversation about mental health and identified future trends. With its increasing popularity, TikTok plays a significant role in tackling this health crisis by giving a platform to a variety of content that promotes mental health awareness, from educational videos to personal narratives, and to challenge the norms by encouraging users and audience to be more open and take part in breaking the stigma on mental health. So the study emphasizes the platform's capacity to engage users in much more meaningful conversation on mental health, and future studies should take into account the changing content formats and innovations on TikTok as mental health advocacy continues to gain traction online. So this study remains open for future improvements and revisions. So this has been Hear Me Out, analyzing TikTok as platform for unveiling the tabooness of Korean mental health. Thank you.
Very much. Can I just check? Am I okay with the echo? Yeah. Okay, great. I seem to have issues. So thank you so much for all of those wonderful, insightful presentations. We have a little bit of time for questions. If you would like to post any questions in the Q&A, please feel free to do that. If there's no others, I have one here that come through. We have a question for Hyunsun. Thank you for very insightful presentation to all. This question is for Hyunsun. I wonder how TikTok's youth-centered user population and playful culture has affected ageism and the way elderly creators like Park Mangne make self-presentation.
Okay, thank you for the question, Joe. Do you mind repeating the question? I didn't get the first part of the question.
I wonder how TikTok's youth-centered user population and playful culture has affected ageism and the way elderly creators make self-presentation on TikTok, such as Park Mangne.
In one word, I think it played a significantly positive influence on self-esteem and the confidence of elderly or older adults as producers. Hence, it encouraged them to equip themselves with the digital literacy skills. In local councils, for example, in big cities across South Korea, have opened up classes for people to make such videos. So starting with how to use internet, how to open your email account, being able to communicate with your friends and family. So yes, definitely TikTok's corporate culture and user-centered ethos have played a significantly positive role in increasing the pool of producers. My point, my starting point really in my small research, this paper, was the tendency of some videos featuring, not produced by, but featuring older groups of South Korean society in a certain way. So being in such a short video format and having to the need to get the message across, perhaps they had to look for some more dramatic responses within the video. But in answer to to that question, certainly a very positive impact on elderly or aging producers.
Thank you so much. I've also got a question in the chat for Anna. Thanks for the great presentation. I'm curious to how TikTok's playful and creative culture has helped debunking the stigmatization of mental health in Korea.
I think TikTok has been effective because it reaches younger audiences who are more open to discussing and opening up with their mental health sentiments in conditions actually. So I think TikTok encourages like these young people to use their creativity to create more content about issues, not only mental health, I guess, about they can some also showcase or highlights gender related issues. So TikTok has been powerful in terms of giving confidence in fostering a safe space for these young people to talk about taboo or sensitive topics. Yeah.
Thank you. And finally, I've got a question for Rebecca, and then if there's some time, I'll circle back. Fascinating arguments about paracultural interactions. We often hear about parasocial, but this paracultural interactions. Do you have also some other findings about how cultures or TikTok platform itself has afforded the forging of paracultural interactions and Western imaginary of Pan-Asianness?
Yeah, I think that I mean, it's been mentioned before, but I do think that the TikTok format, because it's short, so you've got whether it's, you know, like in Jeremiah's paper language or in other papers culture, you know, you're trying to present something in a really, really short format, which may not do full justice, I think, to whatever, you know, cultural concept you're trying to get across. So that I do think that the short video format is difficult. This is why I was interested in the live streaming on TikTok, because it's longer format, and K-pop fans spent a lot of time talking about how that was so much better because it was like a one-to-one FaceTime call. They felt like they got to really know the personality of the author. Now, you know, when I point out things like, you know, but the lighting is perfect and it's clearly framed in a particular way inside a hotel room on a bed to like create the notion of intimacy, and even a hint possibly of sexuality. You know, like I like when I point out that it's very clearly curated, if not constructed. They really pushed back on me and said, no, that this was natural. This was the kind of authentic. This was clear. And it was, I think it was really an interesting challenge for me as an ethnographer, because all I could think of was, you know, when I go to Korea, strangers on the street are not friendly. They do not come up to you as a foreigner and talk to you. I only speak really with the people I know, my friends, my family, my professional contacts. You know, it's not like Ireland where someone will actually come up and talk to you on the street, you know. So but I had to kind of hold that in check, that just, you know, just because it's different my experience, just because they think that this is Korean culture, but I don't think it is. It sort of doesn't matter in some senses. I think it does matter if they travel to Korea and then their expectations are really foiled. That like Minju Lee's research is really important there. But yeah, I think there is something about the short format, and that's, I think, why they like the live, you know, because it's long, it's much longer, and also if they feel that it's more kind of real in a sense. So sorry, that's a very long-winded answer.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. It's we often in Korean studies, we often feel we're in a business of breaking or kind of sort of smashing people's dreams, because they come to us because they're interested in Korean culture. And in our classes, we talk about things like elderly poverty and
yeah, gender
domestic politics and
yeah, gender inequality. You're very cruel, Joe.
That's right. So yeah, that's a really interesting topic. I think just we have a couple of minutes left. My question would be actually for Anna. I'm quite interested in you mentioning that you see self-sufficiency as a kind of drawing on Confucian nature of Koreanness. I'm wondering. I would probably see the self-sufficiency narrative drawing more from 1960s, kind of 1970s Semaul movement, rather than Confucianism. I think it's probably a bit of a stretch maybe to assign the idea of Juche or self-sufficiency to Confucianism, but certainly there are issues with that. You know, when you talk about those short, I don't know how much you've looked at the short TikTok videos aimed at Korean young people by young people. Have you had any chance of doing actual kind of interviews and study of the comments of what the response has been, and whether that's actually sort of whether it's been a very positive response, because it's only been about 5-7 years or so that you know, people have been able to openly talk about mental health, and particularly in terms of idols and so forth.
All right, thank you for that, Joe. Honestly, the researchers haven't like dived deeper in terms of the effects or how Confucianism influences the current trends and the current generation in terms of content creation, but it's something that we really like to explore. But yeah, given the limited time and in preparations and also in writing and all this stuff, I guess it's something that we can take note at the moment and see how we can explore and dive deeper in terms of like how is it reflected on the audiences or the consumers of this kind of content produced.
Thank you. I think we are pretty much on the clock. If there's no other questions, can't see any. We've got a moderator in the background. There's nothing. I think, oh, there's one more question to all. So, interesting panel on connectivity between audience and creator stroke influencer. Do you have any thoughts and insights about the impact or role of TikTok algorithms in shaping such connectivity? All of your presentations talk about very intimate or in Hyunsun's case, maybe even hostile connectivity, but it can be easily slipped through in the constant scrolling of new videos. Who wants to go first? Maybe Rebecca?
Yeah, well, I'm actually in a project right now interviewing Asian TikTok content creators in Europe. And one of the things that they talk about is that you're always chasing the algorithm. So from the content creation side, even if you have, you know, 1 million followers, you're still competing with the newbie who has very few followers to get to the top of the For You page. And so it is pushing them to do what I see as more and more K-pop adjacent content, because they know they can get more followers if they hashtag K-pop into their content and what they're doing. But it puts the algorithm itself puts tremendous pressure on them from the production side. From the consumption side, the people I interview get very annoyed when they start to get non-K-pop content on their feed. So they purposely try to spend more time watching, you know, K-pop content to try to increase the feed. So people are on both sides are actually trying to work the algo to try to get their kind of maximum experience. But yeah, I mean, the intimacy can be sort of random, right? You know.
Great. I'm really sorry. I actually have to cut you all off and leave you with that thought. And thank you so much to our panelists today for joining this very interesting panel. And I'm going to now hand over to Janey to close today's really interesting symposium.
Hi everyone. Thank you again for all coming today. It was wonderful, and very fruitful discussion, conversation we had. Thank you again for the panelists and also moderators. So for what's next, based on this conversation that we had today, there will be edited collection, TikTok Cultures in Korea, edited by Professor Crystal Abidin, me, and also Miss Janey Umback. And what's next? Another one. 2024 TCRN syllabus is coming up. This time it's English and Chinese scholarship on TikTok and Douyin. It's quite unique because a lot of studies that we have done are mostly based on TikTok, not really looking at Douyin. And also some studies about Douyin sometimes, you know, just to conflate Douyin as a Chinese version of TikTok, which is inaccurate. So it is the first scholarship on comparing these two different platforms. And stay tuned for our 11th event in 2025. And again, thank you all for coming here today from all around the world. And I'd like to make a special thank you for Professor Simon Forrest, Curtin University, and also McCarthy here at Curtin University, Faculty of Humanities, and also Ms. Arden Kayla, who did a wonderful, wonderful illustration for us, and special panelists. And also I'd like to thank you for our wonderful crew members here. Please join me thanking Professor Crystal Abidin for leading this, and also Ms. Janey Umback and Ms. Faye Mercier for working together as a great team, and also Korean Research Center at WA, Associate Professor Elfving-Hwang and Dr. Aldin Milek, and also our wonderful HDR student, Michelle Correa, who did live trading all today. Again, thank you so much. And this event was partially supported by the Core University Program for Korean Studies through the Ministry of Education of the Republic of Korea and Korean Studies Promotion Service of the Academy of the Korean Studies. And yes, this was our first collaboration with the KRCWA. And as again, I mentioned earlier, TikTok Cultures Research Network is a research collective that work with a lot of different institutions to understand the different meanings and layers of the TikTok cultures. So if you have any ideas about different aspects of the TikTok cultures, please contact us, and we are very keen to collaborate with you. So this is it. And if all the recordings will be available in the next few weeks on our YouTube channel and also our socials. So please keep in touch with us. And finally, sorry again, our team members, Ms. Faye Mercier and also Ms. Janey Umback, will contact you for the exit survey with the email. So if you have any comments to leave us, then please just, make that note about in the survey section. So thank you again for this today, and maybe next time. Bye.